Welcome, mi amor, to my channel once again. Today, I thought I would tell you a little more about when I started school and I was in first standard. So, the layout of the class was very interesting and lovely. At the back of the class, we had wooden shelves, and there were some interesting toys over there. Actually, they were uh, toys meant to improve your physical dexterity or stimulate you mentally. So we had this one cutout, wooden cutout in the form of a shoe. It looked like an adult shoe, a flat wooden cutout, and that had a lace. So children in their break time, we could just practice, like we would open out the lace and we would practice putting the lace on the shoe. So at the age of 5, I learned how to tie shoelaces properly. We didn't have that song, but yeah. And then there were some other puzzles. You assemble the pieces, and it was very delightful to have those beautiful painted wooden puzzles to work on. And then the library also had some lovely jigsaws with the states of the country where you could assemble and make the country joining all the states, and a few other such interesting toys. But one thing I noticed was that speed was important here. If you could finish your lunch early and then run to the library, those were the kids who would get those things first, and then they would hold on to them. Like then the lunch break would just get over, right? It would be a half an hour lunch break. So I remember Lucky Ram was one kid that I clearly remember. He would eat so fast. He would kind of finish his lunch first, and then also there were always some extra snacks sent for us at lunchtime. So I remember we had those two peons, Raju and Satya. So Raju would come with that van, and sometimes it was loaded with bananas. So then they would count and distribute in each class. So I guess that was a like supplement program, probably started by Sunuben, to ensure that no one is malnourished or undernourished in spite of whatever lunch we all carried. We all carried good lunches. But they had the thing, and one of the coveted snacks that we would get was the Rajgira chikki. So the day chikki was served, we were all so happy and interested. And I remember that the Raju would always give two or three extra pieces of whatever snack it was, and the kid who finished eating first and finished his snack could raise his hand and go for another one. So, since speed was not a strong suit of mine, I never ever once managed to get an extra piece. Yeah, more about this later. So, other aspects where speed was important and I could not catch up with these people was sports, obviously. So, where there would be sports like you play langdi or you play a running, catching cook. We used to call it catching cook. So, there I found it difficult to cope with those kind of things. So, if I was the dinner, I couldn't catch anyone. Santosh Tandel was a tiny little boy, like he used to stand first in queue because he was the shortest, and he would shoot out running like a bullet and you could never catch him. So I remember that. Um, the areas that I thrived, creativity. Creativity was my strong suit. When it came to maybe writing poems or writing something, my ideas were different from the others. And also crafts. In craft class, we had two teachers. We had Sita Ben. So Sita Ben was an origami teacher. So she taught us different kinds of crafts, and I clearly remember the origami color paper, the paper folding class. It was so interesting. And we had Singh sir who taught us clay work. So I remember once it was the first time I was handling clay, and I was wondering what to do. So until that time, we used to do drawing like with crayons and all of that. So the day we were allowed to do clay work, the very first time, I started molding the clay, and then I realized it was not as easy as it looked. So it was the end of the period almost, and I put it in the shape of a soap. And oh, my dad worked for Godrej soaps. That was one more creative bit, like, oh, this is a soap. So I very proudly and happily went to Singh sir, and I was like, sir, I made a soap today. And he was like, that was a waste of clay. So that creativity bit did not work. But there was another time in craft class when Sita Ben had taught us to make a square box in origami class. And the entire class followed her instructions, and this was first standard. And I was the only one who ended up with a square box, and everyone else, the entire class of 28 others, like I was the 29th one to join that class, 28 others somehow ended up making rectangular boxes. So Sita Ben, the teacher, was holding a square origami box, I was holding a square box, and the rest of the class was holding rectangular boxes. And that was the day each and every classmate came up to me and requested me to change their box for them and show me how I did mine. And okay, I don't know how to leverage all these moments. So I literally just, I obliged and I kept on doing that for everyone until I got sick of it. I got sick of children coming and begging, please, 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 just show us Tiny how to make the box. Please do it for me. So at one point, there was this poor last kid. I didn't realize he was the last kid. Now when I think back, I feel why was I mean to that kid? But at this point, I was just sick of doing it. So poor Gayasuddin, later I heard they used to just call him Gas. So his name was Gayasuddin, and they just called him Gas afterwards. So poor Gas comes up to me and he's like, please Tiny, also make the box for me. And I said no. And then he was like, no, please, please do it for me. And I was like, no. And I had made up my mind. And no matter how much poor Gas begged, I refused to change his origami. So the poor guy, eventually he just gave up dejected and went away. So the whole class ended up with the square origami boxes except poor Gas. I don't even know why I was so mean to him. And there was a later experience where it was Raksha Bandhan, and everyone who did not have a brother was asked to tie Rakhi to someone in class. So we were 3 sisters, I did not have a brother. And I remember thinking, we were told maybe to choose someone who did not have a sister. I'm not sure about that. But I remember thinking, oh, I could tie Rakhi to Sandesh. So this Sandesh boy was a bright guy and he went on to become a doctor afterwards, the only doctor from my entire class. And somehow at that time I felt, no, I'm not worthy. I don't even know how my mind worked. But then I just selected Gas. And the next day I tied Rakhi to Gas. And then the boy is supposed to give a gift to the girl after she ties a Rakhi to him, a return gift of sorts. So it was an exciting time when on Raksha Bandhan, like the boys would get all these Rakhis tied on their wrists and they would happily walk around with those Rakhis, and the girls would get excited to get the gifts. Of course, the start of the tradition is a bit dark. It is basically females seeking protection against males. So just females asking their brothers to keep them protected. So this is kind of the sad background to it, and it is a sad fact of life that we do need protection, and females are more vulnerable to crime and that kind of thing, and that is actually the basis, I believe, of this. There is a whole different story to the festival, but yeah, this is the background to it. So Gayasuddin gave me a return gift, and when I went home and opened it, it was pins. I don't know why you would gift someone 100 pins. For years, those pins were in my house all over. Like, the only person who could use them was my dad, because being a Sardar, my dad used to tie a pagdi every day, and then you have to kind of set your pagdi so that it doesn't move, and also then some pins are fixed into that. So it was not even safety pins, it was just those single straight pins. So you literally couldn't use them for anything else. And then over the years, my dad just used them for his pagdi. He had this nice pin cushion. It was a magnetic one. It was not the foam pin cushion. It was not the spongy one, but it was a magnetic one. So then I remember seeing those pins just all over that pin cushion thingy, and dad would use them. So these are my 2 stories about Gayasuddin Gas. So now I'll tell you about a guy called Anthony. So I think I had mentioned last time that Anthony's dad was from Africa. He was of African descent, and Anthony looked completely, he had the looks of an African person. He was black and he had the curly hair. He had a sister, Lucy. Lucy was light skinned, but otherwise she did look like she was from somewhere like Ethiopia. She also had that lean, skinny look. But later I found out that Lucy had an eating disorder and she remained completely skinny, and she would be very stringent about what she ate. So the story that stands out in my mind related to Anthony is that as a stupid 5-year-old, I did not know facts, so please forgive me. I was just a kid. This was not some bias, okay? I was just a little child, and that's how my brain worked. So, this is the story about Anthony. So apparently the boys used to play football or whatever outside at the break time, and I think girls played something else, skipping rope or whatever. And then I remember one day Anthony came back to class extremely sweaty, and I did not want to go near him or touch him because I thought that color would come off with his sweat, because as my little child brain tried to interpret the world, I thought that darker people were darker because they did not bathe properly. Oh God. So I remember once my uncle was visiting, the uncle who was a school principal and had given that graduation exam with my dad, but my dad couldn't give his graduation exam, that uncle, Ranjit uncle. So he was visiting us once in Bombay, and apparently I used to bathe very slowly. So I remember Ranjit uncle took a bath within 5 minutes, and he said, "See, I bathe within 5 minutes." And apparently I replied to him, "That is why you are so dark." So I thought you don't take off the dirt or whatever properly, and that's why you just become dark, which may be the case for some people who get dark in certain areas, but that is not the case around the world. So my skin tends to be a little yellowish, so I am on the lighter side of the average brown Indian skin, but obviously not light like the Kashmiris, but a bit lighter, a yellowish lighter. I remember now, since we're talking about skin tones and skin color and how I thought the bath affected how dark we were, I remember as I grew up to be 12 or 13, with all the puberty changes, uh, Indian people's, the genetics are such that the butt becomes darker. Now, nobody talks about it, especially in those days in the 80s and 90s. So, the butt and a little bit of, like, I had this 1 centimeter area in the upper thigh just between the legs, which was darker, and the rest was normal. My thighs were in fact lighter than the rest of my skin because they're always covered, right? So I remember as a child, when I would have a bath, I would think, what is the reason? Am I not scrubbing properly? And I would take the scrubber and scrub that dark area, that line of dark that went from my. Now I couldn't turn around and see my bottom. I was not even aware. Like, you would have to really turn around and look. In those days, you didn't have that many mirrors and that kind of stuff. So I didn't even know about the butt having become darker or whatever, what was the color of my butt. But I do remember while bathing noticing that why is this one little stretch in my inner thigh that just it joins the crotch, why is this strip darker, a 1 centimeter strip running across up to the crotch. And I would scrub it and scrub it and scrub it every day, and it would turn bright red, almost bleeding, until I realized that, oh, so this is just like this. It's not about me not cleaning it. Another classmate that stands out to me is Devendra. I remember this boy used to tantrum cry it. He was probably a spoilt brat, with Indians valuing their sons. So I don't know, if something happened during break that he did not like, he would fling himself on the floor and ugly cry like a baby in the class. And in my life, I don't remember ever having seen a tantrum wailing like that. And what I distinctly remember is that was the first time in my life that I felt disgusted, and I looked down on the person. Probably the first time in my life I looked down on someone, and I thought to myself, I will never do this. That was one of my first memories of being disgusted by someone and thinking that I will never behave like this. So that is Devendra. Another classmate that stands out in my mind is Yasmeen. So now every day or every other day we used to have story time. So I remember there were different stories told, and at one point there was even a whole narration of the Ramayana, and then after the Ramayana then we had a whole narration of the Mahabharata, the great Indian epics. So these were narrated to us in primary school. And when we were smaller, like in first standard, it was different stories. So I remember one day it was story time, and to me that was the most exciting and happy time of the day. And we all sat around Hilda teacher, so excited. And as the story narration was going on, so we would leave our desks and we would come and surround the teacher. We would sit on the ground around the teacher. And as one day the story time was progressing, I noticed a very distinct stink, like an unbearable stink. So, on the one hand, is my excitement and joy of sitting for story time, and on the other hand, is this unbearable stink. But I was a very good little kid, and nobody else moved. I guess other people around also noticed the stink. We all just sat quietly. We sat in through story time. And then, after story time class was done, we all got up and went back to our desks. And what would you know? There was a turd lying on the floor. There was an actual turd. So that was Yasmeen. Oh my god, Yasmeen, how did you poop during class? Why didn't you ask to be excused? Why did you subject us to that? Oh god, I remember again, that was another time I felt disgust. I just looked at Yasmeen and I was like, we are in first standard. Why are you still doing this? So, remember the bit where I had said they checked for whether everyone was wearing bloomers. I don't know if Yasmeen was wearing bloomers that day or not, but if she was wearing bloomers, that turd shouldn't have been on the floor, because the bloomers had elastics on our thighs, and I don't think it would let out anything solid. So yes, that is one day of storytelling ruined by Yasmeen pooping while sitting in the classroom. Why, Yasmeen? Why? So another classmate that stands out to me is Pradnya. So this was when we were older. Her mom taught Marathi when we were in third and fourth standard. So in first and second, I think we only learned in English, but in third and fourth they introduced the Marathi and Hindi alphabet. So we used to learn the alphabet so that by fifth standard we could read words and sentences. So I remember Pradnya's mom was the teacher, and one day while playing during break time, something happened and all the girls were like, we will not talk to Pradnya. And it was so weird how her mother used, I guess we could call it a mother's love, but to me it was appalling that an adult could manipulate little children like that. So apparently when it was Marathi class, Pradnya's mother came into class, and we were sitting around, and she was like, I hear some of you are not friends with Pradnya. Raise your hands who are Pradnya's friends. Oh my god, you don't do that during class. You don't use your power as a teacher like that on little children. As a little child also, I remember thinking that this behavior is not acceptable, but you're a little child, what are you going to do? So we were all scared, and when she said, all of you who are Pradnya's friends, raise your hands, we all got scared and we all raised our hands, and she was like, good, yes, you all are her friends, right? And we said yes. And then we stayed friends with her. But that's not the way you use your powers. Sorry, Pradnya's mom, but not acceptable behavior. Now, one story that still stays funny to me till this date is the story of Yasmin and Delnas, the two Parsi girls. This Yasmin is different from the Yasmeen, the other Yasmin. So Yasmin was this cute, petite little thing, a white thing. The Parsis are very light skinned. And the first time I saw Yasmin, I was like, whoa, like I was so fascinated. And I had a complex about my long, untrimmed hair, always in braids. And I looked up to people who had trendy haircuts. So Yasmin had a fringe and two little ponytails, and like she looked so cute and smart, and I used to feel a little ashamed of my long braids, that traditional look. So Yeah, that complex was there. I mean, it was exacerbated by so many other aspects of my low self-esteem, right? So, anyway, back to the story of Yasmin and Delnaz. And Delnaz was another Parsi girl. Now, these two girls used to have their lunch sent later in the day. That concept was completely foreign to me. Like for us, mom used to cook in the morning and send our lunch with us. And then there were these dabba walis who used to around lunchtime arrive with baskets full of these hot lunches which the moms, I guess, prepared later and sent. So I don't think anyone from the Godrej soaps side was doing this. This was maybe all the ladies who lived on the boys side. They probably had arranged that service, especially the Parsi ladies. So I remember that Delnas used to be so slow while eating. You know, the lunch period would get over, but Delnaz's lunch wouldn't finish. She was the slowest eater you ever saw. She would just sit and sit and sit with her lunch. Like if I thought I was slow, Delna was squared, cubed, whatever. She was supremely slow in eating her meals. So one day, I think it was third or fourth standard, and Parsis have this festival Nowruz, which is their new year. So that is the day they make a lot of special dishes. They make sevia, the milk pudding with sevai, what do you call it? Vermicelli. And like there are a lot of special dishes they make that day, super tasty food, stuff that they don't cook on a daily basis. So Delnaz and Yasmin got their dabbas, and Yasmin knew that that day the whole treat was being prepared in her house, and she was expecting the special lunch. She was expecting to find her very special lunch, and she'd been excited to have that on that particular school day. And Delnaz opened her dabba and realized that the boxes had been swapped. Like, this is my belief. I do believe that Delnaz realized, because you know what was being cooked in your house. If it was a special festive meal, you would have seen the preparation. You would know that today a very special meal is being prepared. It takes time, right? So by the time Yasmin opened her lunchbox, looked confused at the contents, and then realized this was probably less than 5 minutes. Yasmin opens the box, looks confused, a little disoriented, and then she thinks a little and she says, wait, I think Delna's, your lunchbox has been swapped with mine by mistake. So this is under 5 minutes of lunchtime. It is under 5 minutes after the girls have brought their lunchboxes in. And when Yasmin turns around and looks, Delnaz has finished the food. Delnaz knew. Delnaz just gobbled up the food in under 5 minutes. There was nothing left. Nothing. So poor Yasmin looked so dejected. And she had to eat Delnaz's plain lunch after expecting and being excited about eating her special lunch. And I was in awe. I was like, Delnaz managed to finish her food in about 3 to 4 minutes, and such a special meal, like lots of different things. So that shows that with the right motivation, almost anything can be achieved. So that was Delnaz being mean to Yasmin. So these are some of the stories of my classmates, and these memories stuck with me over the years. Like, I'm almost 50 now, and I still remember these first standard and maybe like other primary school times incidents connected to these particular classmates. So that's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed listening to my stories. I enjoyed narrating them to you. I had fun reminiscing about my classmates. Please do subscribe to my channel if you're not yet subscribed. Please leave a thumbs up if you liked my video. Okay, so that's all, folks, for today. I'll see you again soon. Stay healthy, stay well. Love you. Take care. Bye-bye.